You can see yourself there, I guess.
I do.
All right. So here we go. Um, so you'll need to, either close your eyes or avert your
Okay.
eyes or something for this a literal blindfold for this one.
Get
But
my wife
if
come in here.
yeah, right.
Blindfold.
If you obviously if you have an idea of who it is, you can,
Yeah. I'll
you
keep
know.
my eyes closed. I usually close
Okay.
my eyes anyways when I'm
All right.
listening.
Here we go.
All right, you can stop it. Woo! Safe to look up?
It's
Not yet.
safe to look up.
All right.
Oh, 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 oh.
Killing. I haven't heard that before, but that's a
Uh-huh.
great way to start off. I mean, that
Yeah.
pretty much just sums up everything I love about Brazil. I mean,
Mhm.
I honestly, when I listen to this kind of music, I just kind of listen to the rhythm section. It's like I
Mhm.
could just listen to that rhythm section and be completely satisfied. There's it's just so infectious, and this is where, for me at least, the English vocabulary really falls short. And I think it's also very, as an educator, it's really hard to teach and talk about groove, and because we're talking about the way it feels in our body, the way it makes us physically respond. It's like these visceral feelings. um, so I'll start there. I mean, the band is just so swinging, to use a Brazilian and American term. um, it sounds, I have really no idea, so I'm just going to kind of like think out loud in terms of my analytical process. It sounds like it could be a band from Rio. I mean, that type of samba groove definitely is something that's more prevalent in Rio de Janeiro as opposed to in the north or in Sao Paulo. um, I know there is, it's not Raul de Souza. I know Raul de Souza is playing very, very well. I'm pretty sure it's not Raul. It sounds like a more slightly younger player than him, someone who's coming out of Slide and JJ. Raul, honestly, when I listen to him, I'm sure we'll probably come across some of that later, so I'll save my thoughts. But so I do know there's a trombonist, that I've checked out just a bit. This is just a totally wild guess. A guy named Serginho, who I know is based in that area. But I honestly have no idea who the trombonist was or who the band is. So I'm very, very curious to find out.
Any idea about the pianist?
Well, that was something else I was thinking about, is, yeah, it sounds like a piano-led band for sure. Just given the mix, the piano is so much louder. Um, you know, I really don't, I mean, if it's a Brazilian pianist, I'm trying to think who that could be. I mean, I guess, I really don't know. I mean, I could take random wild guesses,
So,
but
well, I'll give you a piece of information. It's
Mhm.
not a Brazilian band, and it's not a
Oh,
new record.
okay,
It's from the early '90s.
interesting. And it's not a Brazilian band.
No, and there's only
Wow.
one Brazilian in the band who I'm sure you can guess what that instrument that
Yeah, yeah,
Brazilian is
totally,
playing. Yeah.
totally. Wow, I'm stumped. I'm super
Okay.
curious.
All right. Shall we
Okay.
reveal?
Well, shall we reveal it?
Okay, let's do it. Hang on. Let's see here.
Can you see it, Brian?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll tell
Yeah.
you.
Uh-huh.
So so as you see, it's a recording from 1993, and
Okay.
the percussionist was Valtinho Anastasio.
Okay. Yeah, so
The
swinging.
the trombonist was Slide
Ah!
Panken. So you kind of got it. And I'll just tell you, it was McCoy's rhythm section of that time with Avery Sharp and Aaron Scott.
Okay.
Sounded like a bigger rhythm section. Sounded like there were more drums, but
Yeah.
there
Yeah, it
were
did.
only those two.
They're
And I'll just
swinging,
tell
man.
you, swinging. The trombone section also had Steve Toure and
Steve, yeah,
Frank
my
Lacy.
teacher. Yeah.
Frank Lacy.
Yeah.
And it was a piece called Samba del Bear, or Samba de Bear, and the composer was Angel Rangelov.
Okay.
I don't know if you know him or not.
I don't know.
He's a Bulgarian, or what? I'm not sure if he's still alive. He's a Bulgarian composer, arranger, who was very busy. Worked a lot in commercial music.
Okay.
Had a rather flamboyant lifestyle, and as did a number of the people who were in this particular band. McCoy's personal abstemiousness didn't necessarily extend to the people he surrounded himself with, at least in some cases. So anyway, that's that's the lead-off track of that album. So it's
oh, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It would start with that. That's so funny. You know, it sounded, the reason I mentioned Slide for starters was the sound, because that sounds like Slide. But honestly, I haven't heard Slide play in that kind of very upbeat samba style. And it was his language as well, but it just, I would have never thought to put those two together. In terms
So
of
you
him
thought,
playing in a setting.
you thought it was a Brazilian trombonist.
Yeah, I thought it was a Brazilian trombonist who had been checking out Sly Hampton. Yeah.
What was that, because you weren't sure what it was and you thought, well, they're
Yeah.
playing Brazil. Okay, so
Yeah, the context threw me because
I
those
biased
guys were
you.
swinging. Those guys
Yeah.
were swinging. It did not sound like a bunch of Americans, because honestly, a lot of amazing American drummers have trouble playing in this style in an authentic way. They tend to sit back on the beat just a little bit, whereas in Brazil it's the opposite. The drummers sit on top of the beat, and that's why so many Brazilian drummers struggle with playing swing, because swing when you're on top of the beat doesn't feel very good. It's not what we're used to hearing. So these guys definitely had like gotten inside that music more than I would say the average American jazz musician.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That was
thank
fun,
you.
man. Yeah, I love hearing things I haven't heard before.
Onward and
Yeah.
forward.
Please.
All right, let's go.
so good. You guys are picking great stuff. I've heard this before, but I don't know for sure what it is. I'm going to start because you tricked me on that last one. I'm going to start geographically. This sounds Brazilian. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are correct.
Okay, so that's good to know.
I did not trick you. I'll tell you a little story after we get through talking about this track. Anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting track. So I'll just, again, I'm fairly certain I've heard this before. I love that song. Sonically, which is usually where I start when I'm identifying any instrumentalist, is it sounds like Raul de Souza, the tone of the instrument. But I think if it is Raul de Souza, I think it might be a track later in his career. Just given the language is a little bit different than the language he used in the 60s, which is, I'm more familiar with that stuff.
Well, you're on point. So maybe describe how the language is a little different.
Yeah, well, when he was young, he was a fiery player. I mean, I was going to say in the last track when I started talking about him, when I listened to Raul de Souza in his early years, it's like Freddie Hubbard. I mean, literally when he's playing valve trombone, it literally is Freddie Hubbard on valve trombone. The language is so modern, very post-bop, really aggressive. Just the groove in which he plays, the eighth note subdivision, is really, really, really assertive and aggressive, like Freddie, and all over the horn like Freddie. So it's a little more mellow. He's holding notes out. There's these long notes. And one of the interesting things when you hold a note out for a longer period of time like that is the listener gets to live with the sound more. It's hard to really live with someone's sound when they're playing lots of notes, or it's a different sound. So it was fun to hear the resonance of the sound on these long notes, also much lower in register than what he used to play. I could tell it was an older player because they were struggling to get up above, kind of high concert A, B flat, which, for most people, and when they're at their peak, technically speaking, that's not an issue. It's not a high note. And I'm not saying this in like a negative way. Just as a trombonist, I can hear the tension. I can hear the just very subtle struggle trying to get some of those higher notes. It still sounds beautiful and fantastic. But so it's like not so many notes, longer notes, a little bit more, a little less aggressive attitude than when he was younger. And also the style of music kind of called for that though too, because like the music that I'm most familiar with when it comes to Raul de Souza is the samba jazz tradition of the 60s. And that was basically like, it was like Art Blakey meets Brazilian samba, and it's super aggressive and fiery playing. And this was not any of that. Obviously, it was way more subdued and relaxed. So that was kind of my thought process on this.
Two questions. Any thoughts on on who he was playing with? I mean, that may be too much to ask. And second, did you recognize the tune?
Yeah, I absolutely recognize
composer.
the tune. I absolutely know. I know this tune. I've played it. I'm horrible. I'm like the worst you'll ever meet when it comes to song names. So I don't remember the song, and therefore I would have trouble remembering who the composer was. I could guess, but I don't. Is it Sergio Mendes? I'm not sure.
No, it's by Baden-Powell.
Baden-Powell, of course, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's where I've heard the song.
More.
Yeah, that's where I've heard the song. I heard the song on Baden-Powell's album when he one of his recordings. I got really into Baden-Powell for a period as well there, when I first started down this rabbit hole. I love that song so much. But no, the rhythm section, that definitely goes a little beyond my pay grade. I mean, I know my heroes, but like bass and drums, besides some of those samba jazz people I mentioned, like the drummer that Banana, what's his name? Milton Banana, is that his name?
Yeah, it's like Limon, the Cuban pianist. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's another great drummer, Edson.
It's in. I know this.
I forget his last name. It's not him. Yeah, my knowledge of the kind of sidemen is definitely lacking. That's
Well, I'll tell you who they are, and I'm not sure if one of them may be. Anyway, the pianist is Joao Donato.
Oh, amazing! I love Joao.
The bassist is Luis Alves. Any
Okay.
relation to Tiago, to your knowledge?
That's a good. I don't think so. I mean, Tiago would have mentioned it to me most likely.
Or Danny Alves? Or no, I'm just joking. And the drummer was Robertinho Silva.
Okay, of course. Well, I've heard him play many. He's still very active.
Oh, you can see that on the screen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, let me pull.
You don't need
yeah,
to
okay.
tell you that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Joao is. I actually made a playlist a couple weeks ago. I did a public radio Brazilian music show up here in the Catskills on like the local NPR station, and put together a playlist, and I had a track of Joao's. I love him as a songwriter. He writes really interesting stuff.
No. I'll tell you my little story about tricking people. I did a blindfold test many years ago with Conrad Herwig. And so at the time, it wasn't that far after Blue Note had issued these two straight ahead Don Grolnick records with Michael Brecker, which you may have heard. And Barry Rogers was the trombonist on those records.
I know those well.
So I played a track that featured Barry Rogers, and Conrad just couldn't get it. And he said, "You're a tricky motherfucker."
Conrad is one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet. I mean, you know this because you experienced it. Yeah, brass players can be very, very competitive, especially kind of like, I mean, I'm thinking, well, there's so many. I mean, I've played golf with people who, like well, Conrad's a great golfer too. And you wank a shot. I mean, I'm horrible. It's just like fun. You go say, I'm gonna hit this again. They're like, no, you're not. You're gonna go play that ball out of the forest because I'm not letting you hit another one.
Well, you lose a stroke, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, beautiful. I love these first two choices, man.
Well, hopefully we'll sustain the level. I hope so. I
won't necessarily let them always play to the end, but these two, because I wasn't sure, I wanted to take in as much info as possible. So.
We'll play it by ear, just as the saying goes. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, Edson Machado, that's the drummer.
That's right.
I'm thinking of, yeah.
Number 3.
Wow, beautiful. All right, well, I'm going to start geographically again. I think this is American trombonist,
It is.
and I haven't heard this before, but I think if it who I think it is, it's someone who I know has a project with duo guitar, and the trombone playing sounds a lot like this person. So I'm gonna say I think this might be Natalie Cressman.
It is.
Interesting, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful playing. It doesn't get much better than that.
May I reveal? There you go. Yes.
Yeah, Ian Fakini, right? That's what I thought. I've heard some of this stuff online, but I haven't checked out the full record, and I'm now going to do that.
This is the only instrumental, at least the only one that I found that was on this record. On the others.
Yeah, well, that's what I was waiting for, was for her to start singing, because I know she sings a lot in this project. So, but
Beautifully, too.
that would have given it away. Yeah, and you know, her father is also a phenomenal trombonist and someone who's very deep in the Brazilian musical tradition out in the Bay Area. So she is
Jeff Cressman, yes.
Yeah, she's definitely keeping the torch burning brightly. Yeah.
Anything to say about what she was doing on that track?
Well, honestly, I just love the simplicity of it. I could tell it was a more modern player because the sonic influences were coming from, well, for my ears, and Natalie may or may not agree with this, or maybe it's, you know, like in the subconscious. I don't know how that, you know, influences are not always direct or obvious to us, but the sound and the vibrato to me sounded a lot like Marshall Gilks. So, you know, that's what I was thinking. Hey, this is someone of a younger generation, my age or younger. But I loved the way in which she really stuck very closely to the melody. I mean, it was essentially a chamber music performance. There was very little improvisation from what I could hear, other than just a little, you know, superfluous personalization here or there. But I think that they let the music speak for itself, and that's a really mature thing to do, and that's something that, you know, unfortunately, that's an approach to music making in the jazz world that we have lost track of to a certain degree, because everyone feels like it's their job to make it their own and to personalize it. And that's been a tradition for a long time, but I feel like sometimes it happens out of some sort of expectation or pressure, as opposed to happening naturally and because you have something to add. So here the music's so beautiful, and their chemistry is so beautiful, they just let the music speak for itself. And they utilized, you know, dynamic range and the full register of the horn, you know, that, like what great chamber music can do, that kind of push and pull with the tempo, so that it's not super rigid and mechanical, but there's give and take following the shape of the lines and the phrases. So just really, really high quality music making.
Great. That's great. I was going to ask another, but let me just bring up one thing. One thing I have noticed about Natalie Cressman when following her career is that she's fluent in many different styles, and systematically so. I think she's written about funk trombone. She's written about Brazilian trombone and things like this. And do you have anything to say about both kind of the presence of versatility and logic among a lot of trombone players that I know?
Yeah, I have a lot to say, because I made a career for over a decade playing, you know, every style in New York and trying to do it authentically. And I'll speak to that first. I mean, one of, you know, the trombone often resides at the butt of many musical jokes, but we are some of the busiest instrumentalists in these kind of music capitals, like you go to Sao Paulo or France or New York or LA, because the trombone, we may not be out in front very often, and we may not be leading bands very often, but we are backing up so many different bands and so many different genres. And so you start there. We are lucky enough to have the opportunity to function in so many different musical languages. Then it takes someone with an extremely open mind, someone who's attracted to learning all these different languages, because obviously that's not easy to do. And then I think even then, even if you want to, it still also requires someone with the deepest ability to listen, critical listening, and getting at the subtle details that the majority of human beings don't hear and would never hear, because I'm talking, you'd have to be a trombonist, and you'd have to be a trombonist who's been playing for many, many, many years and listening to one particular style for many years in order to start hearing these types of details, timbre, subtleties in vibrato, subtleties in articulation, the way you move the air, the way you stop the air, the way in which you use your slide. There's so many subtle details. And so it requires someone who's really interested in pursuing that type of musical fluency, which Natalie absolutely is and has also made a career doing. So that, and that's something I love. And what I've found to be so rewarding is then allowing those influences to then come back out into my own music, however that might sound at the time. Because once you become fluent in a language, you can obviously then also start speaking that language yourself. And as you're creating music, it's always fun to see how those different languages emerge in different settings, depending on who you're writing for, depending on who you're playing for, audience-wise, where you're playing. And then in terms of the logic, I think that also stems from the trombone's role as a section player. In part, we spend a lot of time sitting in big bands. That's for most trombonists where we learn to play music and where we learn to be professionals. And sitting right in the middle of the big band with the traditional setup and right next to the rhythm section oftentimes. And so you wind up, if you're lucky, well, in the past, this was always the case. Nowadays, you have to be a little luckier, but you get to come up learning by playing Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Thad Jones and Bill Holman, and like the list goes on and on and on. Maria Schneider, Darcy James Argue, so like you're learning to become a professional. This is where these are where you train. This is where you meet other trombonists, where you get your first gigs in big bands. And then you're also playing this incredible repertoire, and all of those composers I mentioned, obviously most great composers for large ensemble have to think logically and structured and organized. That's just kind of how large ensemble music usually operates. So I think, we kind of grow up, so to speak, as a musician, playing music that has a logic to it. And then eventually, as you start writing, you have those influences in you, whether you realize it or not. So I think that's a big part of it. And then, and like you alluded to, it starts from the beginnings of our instrument, going all the way back to band Tommy Dorsey, and then a lot of the swing era composers were trombonists, people like Bill Rousseau, and there's another one I'm forgetting now. And then of course the obvious, the JJs and the Bob Brookmeyers, and they kind of took it to the next level.
Thank you. That was great. Okay, I think we're ready for the next one.
Wow, a lot of
Right?
trombone there. That was
Yeah.
fantastic. Man, that's also that's funny because when I heard the rhythm section, I thought, okay, this is Brazilian. These guys were really swinging, but then I heard the trombone solos. And I'm pretty sure I know who two of the three are. I'm pretty sure the second soloist was Mike Dees, and the third soloist was Wycliffe. But
I don't think so.
no.
No, I don't think so.
Tell me, that was
it's-
fantastic trombone playing. Holy moly!
Well, break it down.
Well, I mean, just all over the horn, extreme upper register chops, especially the second and the third soloists. That second soloist was really, really methodical in the way they articulate. It to me, it definitely had more of a American articulation, kind of coming out of the Carl Fontana doodle tongue. Although their tonguing was even cleaner than Fontana's, but like really, really kind of consistent eighth note subdivision approach. But all over the horn, playing these beautiful bebop lines all over the horn. And then the third player, I know I say Wycliffe because it was such a soulful performance, and also just freak trombone chops, like doing
It's possible that it was, but I don't think that it was, and I'll explain why later.
Yeah. Anyways, but I mean, that's like what all three of them did was very impressive, but the third person in particular really, really touched.
Do you recognize
musically.
the tune?
No, I don't. I don't know that tune. I wish I did. It's a killing tune. It sounds like a classic samba jazz tune, or late choro tune. I'm not sure. But I love the arrangement. It sounded like a jazz musician's arrangement, though, with the intro and the outro. Very smart arranging.
Okay. Let me tell him first before you reveal it.
Okay.
Mac. Okay. Okay. So it was three trombonists. I'm IDing them based on the YouTube track of that has the third solo on it.
Okay.
And has a personnel listing with the trombonists in order, and is posted by the first trombonist who was the arranger. Okay, so that's how I'm getting the personnel.
Okay.
So the first trombonist and the arranger was Alevtina Polyakova. I don't know if you know her or not.
No.
I first heard her in Igor Boutman's band about 6 or 7 years ago, but she left and lives in Brazil now, I believe. Wow. And, but much to Boutman's displeasure. She'll never make it there. Anyway, so she is the first of the trombonists, and I believe that this may be her project, but I don't know. The second trombonist was Corey Wilcox.
Okay.
And the third trombonist was someone I know you know, Jorginho Neto.
Yeah.
That's who's identified on the YouTube thing. The clarinetist was Alexandra Ribeiro.
Okay, that makes sense. So, man, Jorginho sounds fantastic. Yeah, I know Jorginho well. He was one of my primary contacts and
There's a
kind of
great
close.
picture of you guys on your Facebook page.
Yeah, he really hooked me. He set up some gigs. We did a little recording for a song that he did. We did a duo thing. He arranged a tune and he and I played together on it. And man, does he sound good there though. He's playing some trombone. And Corey, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Corey would be coming out of Michael D's. He would have been influenced kind of that world, and both very much coming out of Wycliffe before that. And yeah, that's incredible trombone playing. I really enjoyed that. Is that from an album or is that a
That's from
YouTube thing?
that's from an album that came out, I think, in 2021. Oh, there's the album.
Yeah.
And that was the title track, which
Okay.
Raul de Souza recorded a famous version of in 1965 on his,
Okay.
you know, I guess that his samba jazz debut. And I
Okay.
was, and anyway, so that's what that was. The rhythm section. See if you know these guys. Joao Bueno on piano.
Mm-mm.
Nino Nascimento on bass.
Oh no, I do know Joao. No, I do know Joao. He played on my big band performances in Sao Paulo. He played piano. He's a student of Felipe.
Okay.
Former student. You know, he's younger. And Felipe couldn't do the gigs, so Joao did it. I know Nino. Nino did the same recording I was mentioning with Jorginho.
Jonatas Sansao is the drummer.
Yep, I know Jonatas as well. Yeah,
And
I know. I played with all three of those guys.
And Marcio Forte, if that's the proper pronunciation, is the percussionist.
Okay.
Um,
I will say, seeing Wycliffe's picture on here, it would be good to double check with someone, because I'm pretty sure that last soloist was Wycliffe, and they might have just like copied and pasted the personnel wrong.
okay, I will,
because
do
that's
that.
some freak trombone playing that like truly only Wycliffe Gord, I think only Wycliffe Gord can
Okay.
do.
Well, I thought so as well, but there are two postings on YouTube. One
Okay.
is, you know, like each track on the album under one under, I'm not thinking of it. And then there's a track that she posted that has that
Okay.
personnel
Okay.
that just has the third solo, which
Right,
is,
yeah, it
is
leaves
30
and it doesn't have.
seconds, and she identified it as Jorginho Neto's solo.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'll maybe check with Jorginho.
Yeah,
If
I
you
could.
send me his info. Oh, actually, I made Facebook friends with him after
He's
did this.
super.
So
he's
I'll-
super active on there, so you can.
So
ask him.
I'll send him a note.
Yeah. he'll
But
tell
thank you for that.
That was amazing. I'm gonna definitely check this album out, man. It's phenomenal writing and playing. I have to look up Albertina. I didn't come across her when I was down there my last trip, so it's good to.
All right. All right. On to the next one.
Okay.
That was fun. Oh, so good. Man, I love this. I've heard that before, but it's been like 20 plus years since I heard it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's Curtis Fuller and Wes Montgomery.
No.
No? So then it's JJ. If it's not Curtis, it's JJ. It's one or the other.
JJ.
Yeah, I don't know this, and I'm
Oh.
a bit of a JJ nut. So I mean, like I said, I've definitely heard it, but it's been a long time. I don't have it in my collection, so that's not one.
Well, tell me about JJ and, sort of position this within the context of, the sound of JJ that you know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I wasn't 100% sure it was JJ. I mean, that was what I originally thought when I listened to it. There's JJ's sound is extremely unique. And the way in which he expresses himself with the slide, the way in which he scoops and falls with the slide is also really unique, and everything about his sound is unique. But maybe this is, I don't know, you'll have to place it in time for me, because there were little things.
1983.
Ah, okay. So it's later JJ.
Mid, yeah, later mid.
I'm not sure what, like, how active he was around this time. I know around that time he was doing a lot of Hollywood orchestrations. He might have been based in LA at this time. I think he basically was a full-time composer, arranger, orchestrator.
Yeah.
Because there's little things about the trombone playing that were making me second guess it. And these are not, I don't want JazzTimes to get any hate mail for saying this, but there was some intonation issues, and JJ usually never has intonation issues. I mean, JJ, the JJ that we all know from the 60s, it's just perfect. It's literally like Mozart on trombone. I mean, it's just so perfect. Everything is executed flawlessly. Intonation's always perfect. And there were just little things here that were making me second guess it, which is why I said Curtis. So nothing, no offense to Curtis, but he wasn't quite as of a perfectionist as JJ was in those regards. So yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, like maybe he wasn't super busy on the trombone at that time,
Could be.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
You know who the guitar? Any guesses on the guitarist?
Well, yeah, I mean, so if knowing the era now, I would say maybe Jim Hall.
No, not Jim Hall. It was a Pablo record. So it was JJ and Joe Pass.
And Joe Pass, okay.
And Norman Granz, like to put things together rather spontaneously. I think JJ did a number of Pablos that were kind of ad hoc. So anyway, that's a duo.
Really look forward to listening. One of my favorite records in the trombone idiom is Jim Hall, Bob Brookmeyer, Live at North Sea. It's one of my all-time favorite records. And I love trombone guitar duet because they're both tenor instruments, but they also both have this bass ability. They go just low enough into the bass register that they can play a bass line. They can hold down the roots of harmony. But they're also melody instruments. They're very similar in that regard. They're versatile, in other words. And in the hands of great composing improvisers like Jim Hall and Bob Brookmeyer, or in this case, like Joe Pass and JJ, it's just like the sky's the limit in terms of the music that can be made. So I've been experimenting a bit myself with guitar and trombone duets, and that's something on high on my priority list, something I'd like to do in terms of a new project or a recording. So I don't know this. I'm going to have to check this out more deeply. I think I've heard that track before. I love that song. That's a song I played in Brazil quite a bit. But I don't know the whole record. I'm assuming it must be online somewhere. I'll have to.
Well, these are all from YouTube.
Okay.
So
I wonder if it's on Apple Music as well. I'll have to look.
Okay, well, this would be the free YouTube, so you'll get an advertisement though.
Yeah, I don't like YouTube. The sound quality is not nearly as good as Apple Music.
As Apple, okay.
Yeah,
I like the comments. I just love reading the comments.
Oh God, yeah, you're a brave man, Ted.
I learned something. It's you learn things from how other people hear stuff.
That's true. Very true.
Anyway. All right, on to the next one.
That was
I
phenomenal.
couldn't-
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
that.
I couldn't find it on Apple Music, but it's
Okay.
doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of the stuff isn't available on streaming. A lot of the great Brazilian records that I love aren't on the streaming sites. At least not in this country. They are in other countries. But
Okay, well, YouTube, you find surprises on YouTube.
oh yeah,
Sure do.
So,
Yeah.
some anyway,
deep dives.
deep dives, algorithms take you places. All right.
That's for sure. Yeah, that was fantastic. That's one of the reasons I went down to Brazil originally, was to hear more of that kind of music in person, and to make it to some of these choro hangs that in Rio are super common, and in Sao Paulo you have to dig a little bit deeper in Sao Paulo to find them, but they're there as well. And the trombone is just, it's always there. There's almost always a trombonist, and usually a flautist or clarinetist, sometimes trumpet. But the trombone, it's almost a folk instrument in this tradition, in that it's been around for over 100 years. I mean, it really is a folk music of Brazil, and the trombone was there from the beginning. I'm not super fluent in my knowledge of all the original trombonists, but I do know a couple. So I have kind of like two that I've checked out some, and I know are on recording, because I think many of the original choro trombonists probably never were recorded. It could be someone by the name of Zeta Vela, I think
It
is how you
is.
say it. Oh, it is. Wow. Lucky. I was going to say there's another great choro trombonist named Candino that I have listened to, and is also one of the originators, and is also lucky enough to have been recorded. I feel like so much of that music probably just was not recorded because, well, for the same reason that a lot of early jazz wasn't recorded, you know. So yeah, Zeta Vela, yeah, he definitely is a name that I came across many times when I was digging into the origins of choro.
The trumpeter is Silverio Pontes.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they played a lot together, if I remember correctly. I feel like I've seen them together.
Now, could you identify the composer or the?
Well, really, the only choro composer I know is Pichinguinha.
And that's who it was.
And that guy was so prolific. Like, I swear this guy must have written thousands of songs, because you go to a choro jam and it's like, well, who is the composer? Oh, Pichinguinha. It's one after the next, after the next. It's amazing. The guy was prolific, man.
Well, I gather that Zeta Vela played with Pichinguinha early in his career and later in Pichinguinha's.
Yep, that's exactly what I remember reading as well. Yeah.
Maybe you already talked about this with Mac while I was away, but anything does that performance capture the ambiance that you were describing?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the uniquest quality of choro is what the rhythm section is doing, and like a lot of Afro-European rhythms, it's really hard, once again, to talk about or to codify or to present in more objective terms, because what they're doing is you're not really able to notate it. It sits in between the twos and the threes, the twos of Western European and the three, I'm talking about the subdivisions of the beat, the threes of African music. And every country had their own version. We had jazz, Cuba had its Cuban son and their folkloric traditions. Brazil had theirs. You go to Colombia, they have their own traditions there. But it's just, when you hear it, you know it when you hear it. You just feel it. It feels so good. It's so unique and danceable, and easy and relaxed and effortless. And then the way the horn players sing these melodies on top of it are also not super. I mentioned on the track with the younger trombonists with Jorginho and Corey and Wycliffe, how the articulation was very mechanical. It's extremely even and metronomic. And this is the opposite. If they were to play, first of all, they don't play lots of eighth notes. I mean, and personally, I don't either. I don't find much compelling music to often have more than a few eighth notes in a row. Even bebop, people think, oh, it's eighth note music. No, they'll usually place a few and then they'll have a little rest here, and that's why it has the syncopation and the rhythmic energy. But here, if they do play some eighth notes, and you really dig in to transcribe that, they're not evenly subdivided, but it's not swing either. It's somewhere in between, and it changes depending on where they are in the phrase, depending on where they are in their instrument, depending on where they are in the music. It changes subtly. It's like really sophisticated presentation of the groove of the subdivision. And that's the kind of thing I was interested in listening to more down there in Brazil, because you can only get that at the source.
Thank you very much.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Do you need a break, Ryan? Are you cool?
No. Do you, Ryan?
I'm good, man.
Okay. Yeah.
You're a young guy. So.
Large bladder.
I would say I that's the third time that I heard that tune, and I still just keep thinking Rockabye Baby. That's what I can't.
Well, most of that choro music is really, really simple harmony like that. It's interesting. It wasn't about the harmony. It was about the melody and then the groove. It's crazy.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the placement of the phrase is different, but it's like there you go. That's it. Okay, on to number 7.
Oh, that was great. I don't know that, but I love this so much. That's definitely has to be Brazilian music, Brazilian musicians.
Part
Partly.
north, part south.
Okay. North Brazilian,
North American,
North
no,
American. Interesting.
North American and South
Okay.
American and European.
Wow. All right. Well, that was super groovy. I love the arrangement. I love the fact that the trombone didn't always carry the melody. That's not something you hear in jazz arranging very often. Typically, if there's a horn, the horn's either playing the melody or the horn's not playing in a quartet setting like this. So here the trombonist played some counter lines. And to me, that harkens back to the role in Choro that we were just discussing, because the trombone typically was more of a counter melody instrument in that tradition. So I love the arrangement. I love the performance was fantastic. It's so interesting to hear the hybridization nowadays. This is a more modern record that sounds like something from the last, I don't know, 40 years or so.
Last 2008.
8, okay.
It came out.
Yeah,
Maybe it was recorded in 2006 or 7. I don't
okay.
know, but it's.
You know, it's so interesting because this hybridization of jazz meets Brazilian music is ongoing. It's still taking place, and you hear it here. The lines that the trombonist is playing are very, very jazz bebop centric, but the groove and the subdivision in which he plays them are undeniably Brazilian. There's just such a Brazilian attitude to the groove and the subdivision, and that kind of hybridization still happening even in more modern jazz contexts, where you have someone like Kurt Rosenwinkel, who hires all Brazilian musicians to play in his caipi band, and then those musicians go and make their own music, and it's got this Kurt Rosenwinkel influence. Of course, Kurt's primary influence songwriting is Toninho Horta. That's who he was drawing on, but of course Toninho was just emulating Pat Metheny. It's like just crazy, you know, back and forth between our countries, musically speaking.
And he's producing his caipi musicians on his label, so it becomes a veritable industry.
It really does, and that's some of my favorite new music, by the way. Anyways, so I don't know who this is. If I took a wild guess, and I think it's a Brazilian trombonist, is that correct?
It's an American trombonist.
Oh, okay.
It's a Brazilian drummer.
Okay. American trombonist. Well, that completely changes things for me. Boy, who would that be? Man, I'm stumped.
Okay. Any guesses on who the drummer was? Did you recognize?
I mean, it sounded like a great Brazilian drummer, but I don't know who that would be.
Okay. And any ideas about who the composer might have been?
Not particularly. No, I don't know this song. I definitely haven't heard this. I'm stumped.
Okay, the song was called Doce de Coco. It's by Jacob do Bandolim. The arrangement, I believe, is by the trombonist, who's Jay Ashby. And it's with Portinho's trio, with Klaus Mueller, Itagora, Brandao, and Portinho.
Amazing. Okay, so yeah, Portinho, killing. Well, he sounds fantastic. I'm not really hip to his playing. I know him through the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, but I need to dig deeper into his repertoire. He sounds fantastic, man, and he absolutely has that Brazilian groove in his playing, that flavor, that swing. Fantastic.
Okay, so nothing particular to say about Portinho then.
No, I don't know much about it. I just in name only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on. There are 4 left.
Okay. Cool. Here is number 8.
Pretty sure I know who this is already. All right, you can stop it. Wow. Well, I take back my comment. I'm not sure I know what this is now. This is insane. I'll tell you what I was thinking. When I heard that piano intro, the synth sound and the way it was, I thought for sure, okay, this was going to be Armetto, kind of large ensemble. But then they start playing this music. It's like, man, it sounds like Mingus almost. It's just so loose and it's so soulful. And of course, Armetto can certainly be that way. So I started, and then the trombonist really threw me for a loop, because at first when he's playing the melody, I thought, okay, this has a certain vibe. But then started soloing, and it just absolutely threw me, because when he started soloing, it sounded more American. It sounded like someone coming out of like AACM, or kind of like, I don't know, that era and that generation. So I can't say for certain who the trombonist is. I wish I should know. I feel like it's someone I probably do know, and I just can't place in this context. But
would you like to take an informed guess?
On the trombone?
Yeah, and the arrangement too.
Well, is it Armetto?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay. So then I would say, it's really hard to say. It definitely has kind of a Mingus vibe to it, but it's not.
Well, orange was the color of her dress.
Right. Okay.
So it was Mingus.
That's right. So it's Mingus.
That's why there's a Mingus.
That's what I was recognizing. Man, I don't know. Part of me wants to say someone like Ray Anderson, kind of that.
No, not Ray Anderson, but that's in the ballpark.
Yeah. Craig Harris.
Not Craig.
No, I don't know. Tell me, I'm stumped.
Okay, I'll tell you. The trombone soloist was George Lewis.
Ah, of course. I knew it was someone I should know. I should know that.
With Gil
Man.
Evans.
Ah, of course. I was thinking, yeah, I was thinking maybe this is one of those crazy Gil. Man, it's so interesting. And he was into those insane synth sounds. You know what's interesting is at that same time, Bob Brookmeyer was also really getting into writing for synthesizers in his large ensembles.
Well, there were 3 synth players on that day. Or 3 keyboardists. Well, Gil wasn't playing synth. He was playing electric grand piano.
Okay.
And Puka Kuchi was on synth. And Pete Levin was also on
of course,
synth.
Yeah.
And Billy Cobham was the drummer, Illyrio Lima percussion. You might have heard the lead alto, that was Arthur Blythe.
Yeah.
Blewett was the baritone player. So you were spot on really about the AACM thing.
Yeah.
And Ray Anderson and George were in the same high school together.
Yeah, they definitely share a lot of background. I should have known George. I love George. I'm a big fan of his playing. I just, in this context, it really threw me, especially coming from the Brazilian world. I'm still trying to place it in a Brazilian context. But
anything to say about his trombone playing as expressed on that solo?
Well, I just think it's so interesting to hear how different a trombonist can play, because this is utilizing more avant-garde language, more extended techniques on the instrument. And so kind of the pathway in which we've been proceeding over the last, up until this point, have all been in a very traditional framework from the trombone perspective in terms of playing it a certain way, certain expectations and kind of foundational principles. And here George, he is incorporating a lot of other language and a lot of other influences. And it's amazing that it's still the same instrument, to be perfectly honest, because it's just so radically different in effect and in expression than everything we've listened to. And of course you hear the connection too. I mean, they're connected, but it's just, man, it's amazing how wide an umbrella jazz is, and I love that. I love how versatile the trombone can be.
Okay, great. Well, let's do, that was great, by the way. Let's do the next one.
Now we got some Ernesto. Wow, is that a studio fade out? Or did you do that? Is that really how it ends on the album?
Mm.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I guess so. I guess I was one track ahead of ourselves here. That that had to be Hermeto. I recognize his flute playing immediately. He's one of my heroes. He, on many levels, I think. Well, I love the way he writes for the human voice, whether it's himself singing or all the incredible vocalists he's had pass through his bands. One of the inspirations, actually, for me when I started writing for vocals and catharsis, especially wordless vocals. And just the human voice is so expressive, so powerful, maybe the most powerful instrument. So I love that. I also love the way in which Hermeto used his commercial success in the 60s to essentially fund his creative endeavors for the rest of his career, and how that it obviously fed itself and sustained itself. And I love this idea of creating like a musical commune, or this community of people that Hermeto surrounded himself with, and in some cases like people who actually literally lived with him in these musical commune environments, and just making music all the time and creating music all the time, every day, all day, every day. Like for me, that's my dream, to someday kind of have a situation similar to that. So yeah, that was really fun. Thanks for picking that track.
Are you familiar with where the track is from?
No, I don't know this album, and it's interesting to hear a full orchestra, because talk about commercial success. I mean, that's a major production, whatever that was.
That's, I think, his first American album, A Brazilian Adventure.
Oh,
from 1970.
Yeah.
So, and then it was for Cobblestone, and then Muse put out the CD, I think, with more tracks around 1990. And so I'm just going to read you some of the players just so you can see what he did with the New York studio band.
Yeah.
The trumpet section was Thad Jones, Joe Newman, Ernie Royal, Snooky Young, and Melvin Davis. Trombones were Garnet Brown, Wayne Andre, Jack Jeffers, and Dick Hickson. Ooh. Don Butterfield was the tuba. You know, everyone an iconic New York studio player. Joe Farrell, Jerry Dodgen, Arthur Clark, Hubert Laws, a couple of others. Jerome Richardson as well.
I was going to say Jerome,
Ron Carter and Airto.
Woo! God,
and then a bunch of strings about
full string. I wonder where they recorded this.
Full string section.
You know, and there's a great example of music that I'm not familiar with because of the digital age, and this is not on Spotify or Apple Music.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, exactly. So I need to start digging into the way in which I listen to music, though, is usually on the move, you know, on a subway or in a car, and it's just hard to do that with YouTube sometimes. But this is going on my list for sure, because that was so great.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, I guess he said it all. I juxtapose that to Gil Evans, because Hermeto is circa 1970 was very much praised by Miles Davis. Right? Didn't Miles call him the greatest musician in the world or something like that?
Something like that.
And then we had Gil before that. And I don't know if a musician would hear correspondences between Hermeto's orchestral concept and Gil, but I did in that juxtaposition.
Oh yeah,
I think Ryan just did, because he thought the first one was.
I thought the first thing was Hermeto. No, I hear there's a complete overlap between those two, and it makes you wonder how much Hermeto Gil was checking out, because one of the great mysteries for me when it comes to Gil Evans is what went into the radical swing that his music and his career and the way in which he chose to write and make music underwent, because those groups he had in you know, his final years, the Gil Evans stuff that we heard in the 80s and late 70s, it could not be more opposite from the majority of the music he made throughout his life up until those last 10-15 years. You know, it's like you wonder, maybe he checked out some Hermeto and had his mind blown and like completely shifted his focus. You know, it's like, what, how did all this how did all of this intertwine? It's, I talked to, there's a guy in Rio named Mario Ajne, and his sister Mausha Ajne, you guys probably know.
Yeah.
And Mario was friends with Joe Beam, and he's brought his project to Jazz Lincoln Center a few times, in which I've had the pleasure to play with, and brings up a Brazilian rhythm section. Anyways, really interesting guy. And he was telling me when I was hanging with him in Brazil that Joe Beam's primary influence, this is before he was Joe Beam, before he had written all his big hits, was Jerry Mulligan Tentet.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
You like the counterpoint.
Exactly. And just the super logical, but sophisticated, streamlined, efficient compositions, really beautiful compositions. It's like
the cool sound.
And the cool sound for sure. So like, had he not told me that, I don't know how public knowledge that is. Like when you think about it, you could argue that Jerry Mulligan was instrumental in bossa nova. Like, I mean, how far you want to draw those conclusions is
Well, Chet Baker certainly was.
Absolutely, and Chet, of course, and Jerry were coming from the same place.
I don't think that's so far-fetched.
Yeah, but like I never ever would have guessed that. And that particular group, like it was one album that they happened to be able to get in Brazil at that time. This Tentet album, and it's just the overlap to me is what's so interesting.
Yeah, all the connections and ebb and flow of jazz language on all the different dimensions of it is an endlessly fascinating subject.
It really is.
All right.
I like to think maybe Miles hung out with Gil one day and was like, "You gotta check this out. This is the best
totally,
in the world."
It could be.
Yeah.
Totally.
Could very well be.
All
right. 2 to go.
Next.
Of course, Gil may have gone to Brazil at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Gil may have said to Miles, "Check this guy out. He's the best." I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably tell you. Anyway.
Yeah, Maria might know. Well, and Gil was working with Astrud in the 70s, so it could, who knows? Maybe it was through Astrud. It's like anyone's guess.
Right. All right, here's number 10.
Signoma nascette stunin non era un momento giusto per sgravare. Is nascette che faccia fama non tenevano nome per sciodare. E come crescette non saccio spiegare. Fui stessa crescendo e s'amma levare. E quando era creatura non giorna ricette e già posso fare. Hai capito? Hai capito? Hai capito? Oh, nonnillo mio, hai capito? Hai capito? Picceri le mo arriva. Torna surata e veloce per scale e mi porta riale per mi fa imbriacare. Tante catene durate, signor, se ne volessero quelle per portare. Mi portai in a borsa tutte cose in te, chiave, un'accendina, cuorne e scapolare. E poi un fascio di documento che se venissero a me controllare. Hai capito? Hai capito? Hai capito? Oh, nonnillo mio, hai capito? Hai capito? Demo arriva. Torna in tuo vico con caricamento, bracciale, scemiente, rilorgia in un registratore. Mi prega e stonne rapina mi fa orrore. Mi consola e se mi consola e mo mette in braccia mi fa congogliare. All'intrasata mi sceta, mo cerca a fianco e io dannata e chiudo a faticare. I capi, oh nella mia capi, do piccere, i capi, do nella mia capi, do piccere.
Torna stampato giornale, ritratto con luoghi e copierte con l'iniziale.
E non capisco sta gente, signor, fanno troppo bordello, ma che state? Una nella terra mi pare carina, e come bella come se la pizza. Io non l'avessi mai detto se no. Fui a dici già posso fare, capite, donami la mia, capito, piccoli, le capi, donami la mia,
Wow. Well, that pretty much sums up everything I love about Brazilian music. It's so beautiful. What an incredible song. I haven't heard that, but it sounds like a Jobim tune to me.
Not Jobim, but
No?
in the ballpark.
It's an interesting arrangement. It also sounded like not only the song, but the piano playing and the orchestration of the song had a real Jobim flavor to it. He would oftentimes use the piano like they did here, just playing single note or octave counter lines, as opposed to your typical harmony accompaniment. I'm curious, whose song was this? This is a great song.
First of all, anything to say about the vocalist
And
about the lyrics?
Well, I don't speak Portuguese.
It wasn't in Portuguese.
Well, that's what I thought. It sounded Spanish.
It wasn't Spanish.
What was it?
Neapolitan dialect.
Yeah, I heard those rolled R's. I'm like, that doesn't sound like Portuguese, but then it was hard to pinpoint it. Interesting. Okay, so this is Italian?
Well, it's cross-cultural.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, musically, obviously, but the lyrics were Italian.
The lyrics were Italian, but they were translated from the Portuguese by the singer. And the composer was playing guitar. And there's also, so is that enough hints for you, or could you extrapolate from those hints?
Yeah, I mean, the singer she had a gorgeous voice. I really have many guesses. Italian vocalists. I mean, unless it was like Roberta Gambarini, but I don't think it's not her. Doesn't sound like her. So I really have no idea on the vocalist. You say it's the guitarist and composer. And
who also entered, I think, singing the original lyrics later in the.
I really dug his voice. He he had a Joe Beam kind of vibe to his voice as well. Who would that be? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I'm stumped. I love that recording.
It's Maria Pia de Vito.
Okay. I don't know her.
Well, she's
Chico
the
Buarque.
artistic director of the Bergamo Festival, and she's done, 30 albums.
Amazing.
In every area of music, from scat to ligeti. She's that sort of, and in many languages. And any event, this project was with Chico Buarque, and that was his tune.
I was just listening to Chico Buarque a couple of days ago.
So Chico Buarque tune is called O Meu Guri, Meuguri, and her translated version is O Pizzerio. My bad pronunciation.
Interesting.
Gabriel and it was a collaborative project. Gabriel Mirabassi was the clarinetist, and Hugh Warren, Welsh pianist, was the pianist.
I got to look that up. Omeo Guia is the.
Omeo Guri.
Omeo Gori. Okay, I got to write this down.
I'm going to send you the playlist.
Oh, wonderful! I just found it, Chico Buarque. Yeah, looks like there's a ton of versions of it too. I have to dig into. There's a great tune, man.
Anything else to say about it conceptually? Otherwise,
well, like I said, it's funny. I was just talking about Mario Ajne, and those projects that he puts together are similar to this in that he takes these incredible songs, a lot of Joe Beam tunes in his repertoire, but whomever it might be, these amazing songs, and then he just perfectly orchestrates it using these mid-size ensembles, and oftentimes the piano is playing counter melodies, which, like I said, is something Joe Beam loved to do, and a couple of horns playing these obligato lines. It's so smart and sophisticated orchestrational ideas, and when you start with a great song, it doesn't take that much, so for me it just kind of fit right into that Brazilian tradition, but to hear that it's this Italian singer, I'm definitely going to check her out.
It's interesting because a lot of musicians from the Mediterranean countries seem to have an affinity for Brazilian music within their own vibrational context.
That's very true. And then also many of them have an affinity for the Afro-Cuban salsa, Eddie Palmieri, Fania, that kind of.
Sure.
If you go over there to like Mallorca, there's like blowout salsa festivals happening, like year round. It's interesting though. Again, that cross culturalization, something about this music allows for it.
Okay. Well, last one.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Pretty sure I know who the trombonist is. Sounds like an American band. Classic, fitting way to end. I mean, I knew who the trombonist was in the first 4 notes of his playing. Such a unique player, someone obviously I'm very intimately aware of in terms of his playing. It has to be Steve Toure.
And it is.
And then, of course, when he starts playing with the harmon mute, you know, it's an awesome sound. I forget about that sound. We don't usually use harmon mutes as a solo instrument. It doesn't work like it does for trumpet. We use it differently in that context. But it's such a great sound, and Steve definitely is one of the few who use it. It does so beautifully. And then, of course, with the shells at the end, that was the icing on the cake. Exactly.
If it hadn't been given away already.
Yeah, I mean, I recognized it immediately, and actually even before he came in, before he played his first few notes, I already knew it was an American band. It's pretty. I've gotten pretty good at detecting the Brazilian, rhythm section players versus American rhythm section. Or I shouldn't say I can't always detect, but if the cats are more jazz players, American jazz players, I can usually hear that pretty much immediately when they're playing Brazilian music. And it's not good or bad, it's just completely different.
Any guesses on who at least the pianist was?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. It's like, because I know I've heard this album, I know I've listened to this album because I think it came out around the time I was studying with Steve, maybe just before. But
no, it came out later.
Oh, it did. Okay. But for the life of me, recent. I can't remember who he was working with on piano at the time. I know on bass, is it Buster Williams? I know he works with Buster.
No, but you're in the ballpark.
Yeah, well, I haven't checked out his most recent records. I need to get back on the horse. You tell me who the rhythm section is. I don't know.
Well, Kenny Barron.
Ah, okay.
Ron Carter.
Wow.
And Jimmy Cobb.
I never would have guessed.
And you notice that the percussionist is Ciro Baptista.
Kill
him. Are you familiar with the 3 Brazilian records that Kenny Barron has done?
Yeah, not intimately, but I am aware of them, and I've heard bits and pieces. But I need to dig deeper into his Brazilian, experience.
It's interesting because I don't think he's making any effort to be, to compose idiomatic Brazilian songs, but more songs that evoke the flavor of it. And he wrote a bunch of originals within that context. So one of the records was with Toninho Horta and a Brazilian rhythm section. The second one was with Trio de Paz. Wow. And the third one was with a group called Brazilian Nights with a bunch of younger Brazilian Brazilian musicians and playing their compositions. So I just was wondering if you were familiar with
No, I need to dig into that.
He has an affinity for the feel.
Yeah, obviously. I knew that he had spent time in his career, exploring that world.
Well, with Dizzy, he was with Dizzy right after Dizzy recorded, One Note Samba and went to Brazil with Lalo Schifrin. So I think his experience with Brazilian music goes back to Dizzy, who
way back.
Played it. Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be contributing.
No, this is not only am I going to check this record out for sure, because what a band, but the Kenny Barron stuff, I definitely, especially the one with Tonino Horta, I'm not aware of that album, and I need to be, because Tonino is one of my heroes through all of this. So
that one is called Sambao,
Okay.
Sambao.
Cool.
Sambao. It's from 1992
Okay.
or 93.
I'm definitely going to check that out.
So
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Any final observations? You know, like thinking back on this this torrent of music that subjected you to.
Well, I commend you for straddling the line of finding trombone based ensembles for obvious reasons, me being a trombonist, but then also kind of you know, playing with this Brazilian theme. I love that. I wasn't expecting that at all. And actually, I kind of surprised myself at how well I did, because like I said at the beginning of this, my Brazilian rabbit hole nosedive, which I'm like in year 5 of, just goes deeper and deeper into this very, very specific era, and none of which was touched on here. And so, of course, along the way, I've become more accustomed to, or become more aware of other musicians, and the trombone's role in particular in Brazilian music is something that got me here to begin with. But I think, you know, it's just amazing at how versatile the trombonist is and can be and will continue to be. And I hope that someday it finds its past glory, because, you know, it's been a second-class instrument for many, many years. And you know, there's really no good reason. It's just trends and pop culture, and you know, that's another conversation. But
there was a sort of recrudescence. Is that the word? Well, anyway, but Slide Hampton's World of Trombones from the 70s. A lot of people who played in that developed solo careers in the 80s and early 90s. But then that sort of it became more specialized.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and there's no doubt that the trombone is achieving new heights from a technical standpoint. I mean, there are people doing things today that no one thought was possible 30 years ago, technically speaking. And so it's just a matter of time. I hope that you start seeing more. Well, you know, I mean, what Wycliffe is doing, what Michael Dees is doing, what Marshall Gilkes is doing, what Elliot Mason is doing, they're pushing the instrument technically and musically in directions and ways that no one ever dreamed of, in terms of speed and virtuosity and register and range and language, playing things that no one even attempted to play. But you still don't see many trombonists headlining bands, and you go look at all the summer festivals in Europe and you'll count on one hand, and most of them are probably Europeans, which is great. You know, Gianluca Petrella one, or Nils Vogrum is another, but like, you just don't see in American jazz world many trombonists leading bands right now, and it's been that way for a while. So
only on records, like Michael Dees, I guess, has his contract with Positone, so
he's prolific on records.
He puts out, you know, but it's and you put out a lot of records.
Well, I try.
Maybe doesn't translate to public.
It's hard. I don't
so much.
Yeah, I don't know. It's now it's a whole nother thing too. I mean, it's been that way for a long time, and now the Instagram age is upon us, and
the pandemic. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to talk about any of these things right now because everything is so AWOL. But I really appreciate your guys' time. This was super fun. I learned quite a bit, as I usually do in these situations. So
all right. Well, thank you.
All right, guys.
I'll let you get
Thank
on
you
with
so
your
much.
day.
Yeah, my pleasure.